ultimately, our industry is all about stability, and it's about predictability. And we've now gone, starting from tariffs through COVID, we've gone 18 months of no predictability and no stability. So we are hoping and really projecting for a stable 21. Just knowing the outcome of the presidential election, knowing the outcome, really if there's a vaccine or not, those pieces in place. Obviously, we are attracting. I think the stat I saw was 150,000 people a month are migrating to Arizona. And we certainly know that the home building side of construction is going to pick up. And so, although we're projecting 22 being much better than 21 for the commercial side, we do see an uptick, certainly. The other piece of COVID that unfortunately happened to us was projects were put on hold, not canceled. So we've been sitting with backlog on our books all 2020 that will break loose. So we have that amount of work to do, and then obviously what's going to come forward. So our projections are fairly flat for 21, growing into 22. And then I start really getting into the crystal ball and economists that start looking at the end of the decade being a real tough span. But for the next 4 or 5 years, we see stable growth. I was fortunate to have a lot of relationships in Europe. And so in January and February, we were able to kind of hear what was happening in Spain, hear what was happening in Italy, and start preparing ourselves a little bit better for what may and may not happen. In Arizona, our industry, we have to have the ability of all of our employees to work remotely. So the infrastructure of being able to have people work from home was not hard to do. Ultimately, the struggle, which has been interesting, is the culture. How do you manage a culture in which we were a very tight-knit group that everyone now works out of their homes? So from an internal side, trying to connect people, and Zoom only works so far and happy hours only go so far, but really trying to get small groups put back together, project teams working together, and trying to create a dialogue about COVID where people feel comfortable sharing what their personal fears are, what their space they need, and really trying to group people into where those all sit. The external side has been much tougher under the construction side, from a general contracting standpoint, managing labor forces on site with masks, cleaning stations, and all those pieces with the thought of maybe an exposure. What happens is the whole crew gets quarantined. And so our people are having to manage projects in which 10 or 15 people off the job just are missing one day. And so how do you keep all those things moving has been a huge, huge challenge for our field staff. But by and large, we were fortunate being an essential service in construction, so we stayed busy, but it's day to day. We really have to manage the details day to day right now. We have a culture that has a lot of autonomy at Jokake, so really our teams are empowered, and so to have 30 or 40 projects going on at the time that COVID hit, really the teams are empowered to figure out how they work forward. So I really just have to work with our internal team, management team, to figure out what are the guidelines that we're going to follow and how do we roll that out. So if my style is anything, it's I empower people to make decisions. And as long as I just create kind of a roadmap, they're usually successful. We were working so hard and fast, really straight in the construction services through 17, 18, and really the first half of 19. The volume was fast. Really what we were seeing in projects in really the Southwest was moving quickly. The pandemic, you had to pump the brakes. And so what we ended up doing is we really started pushing a lot of our additional services out to clients. Nobody really knew what was going to happen, what the next option. And so our ability to provide design solutions, development services, financial services in a time where somebody's questioning really became something that connected us to our clients. And what I think we realized more than anything is we can really be so much more to our clients than we were expecting then. And before, it was just as fast as we could build. And the interesting thing that I did find, not that it surprises me, but I was somewhat ashamed not to have noticed it before, is our people really want the opportunity to spread their career and their learning across different disciplines. So we've had people in the field that have interest in running Revit models and in BIM aspects and really getting into the virtual side of things, in which the old thought was maybe they just want to come into the office and be a project manager. So being able to really offer these options across to our people has been something that will make us much stronger moving forward, and maybe not so reliant on how fast and how much we can build. And so I'd much rather be better than bigger, and I think the pandemic has proved out to that for us. I think there's, what is the new way of doing business? Obviously, in Phoenix, we're very fortunate to have been somewhat in front of the e-commerce side, in industrial data centers, in really these things. These marketplaces actually are benefiting Phoenix as a whole, but it's a new way of doing business. And I think the pandemic pushing individuals to work from home now creates a bigger strain really on the infrastructure standpoint, data centers. So that seems to be driving that. But the new way of doing business in Phoenix, whether it's legal, financial, I'll caveat this into office space. Nobody really knows how they're going to move forward yet. Are they going to have everyone work from home, or are they going to have everyone in the office but spaced apart? And so square footages on existing buildings are going to be a challenge for a few years. And so we really have to see how can we repurpose some of these assets that used to be just office into maybe more of a retail space or a co-working space or something along the lines of this COVID and the safety issues. So that dynamic. The other one is we really are going to have to build virtually everything. Ultimately, we communicate via electronic now. So teams with the ability to model projects three-dimensionally, communicate with their clients three-dimensionally without face-to-face meetings will be, I think, the new normal forever. It cuts down on travel. It cuts down really on that interaction that, COVID's going to be around, whether we have a vaccine or not. So we're going to have to be prepared to work with a little more space than we used to. And I think that's going to happen from a virtual platform.